back for another Street Hockey Life podcast. This is great. So today I have a special guest, a guy that I've actually been following his career a little bit, and I got a chance to meet him in person at North Americans. He can tell you that I just went right up to him and introduced myself. And I had heard a story, and I'm going to butcher the story. So Ben, if you're listening to this, forgive me, but I had heard of Nick Carter. He had been living in Florida and played against Young Legends treasurer, and I've known this kid for years, Ben Shinkola. And Ben said, "I know Nick Carter because I played against him. You were living down in Florida, Nick." And he said that if you got the ball away from him once, that would probably be the last time you got it from him. So it was a huge compliment. And so today, Nick Carter, thanks for joining us. How's things going?
Yeah, good. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to do this.
My pleasure. So, if it's okay, I kind of want to go back. I was fortunate enough to go down to North Americans with my wife, watch her play in the C division. It was a great moment seeing her play out there. And I had played in the novice division back in 2021, right after COVID. But it was a real privilege to sort of see the A division play. And Jason Kelly does a phenomenal job of the live stream. And I will say the camera does not do justice to how fast you guys move, how quickly you move. The decision making is so quick, the physicality too, Nick. I mean, it was a huge tournament. But what was the experience like for you? You've played in a lot of these now, but what was 2024 like for the Americans?
Yeah, I mean it's one of the top tournaments of the year. So it's something that you always look forward to. It's one of the has the most, I'd say, experienced teams in it. Like you have like the guys coming down, like the Godfathers coming down from Canada, obviously all the American teams like the Gods, Warriors, Arsenal, us. So I mean it really is, it puts everyone on display, and it's one of the best tournaments, and it's the hardest competition. So I mean it's always fun to play in it. And it's I'd say it's one of the hardest tournaments to win too. It's for us, that was our first finals, even making it. Unfortunately, we didn't win. I mean, the Gods, hats off to them. I mean, it's always a good game against them. But I mean, I think they proved why they've won it so many times.
Awesome. What I mean, I've heard with you guys specifically with the Americans. First off, how long have you been with the Americans though? And have you played for like the Saints in them, or are you primarily Americans?
Yeah, I was I'd say one of the, not founding fathers, but I was like one
Oh,
of
really?
the first kids on the team when the Americans were first created. And this was like right out of, we were still like freshmen when this happened. And it was just like we had a core group of guys where we wanted to go into an A or go up into men's right after freshman. So we kind of just created that team. We were There was like a mixed team originally called the Capitals, and then we eventually went into the Americans. And I mean, obviously you have guys come and go over the years and whatnot, but that was when it all started. I mean, and then it's like we entered in. I remember when we first entered in as the Americans. I think it was in like nationals or Can-Ams, and it's like you're playing against all these top end Leominster teams when we were growing up, like the Rams and like the Elite and everything like that. And it was definitely an eye opener. I mean, we got our butts kicked a couple times. I mean, especially as us being young guys, but I mean that's how we grew up, and that's how we started this whole team.
So if you're who are the other founders other than yourself then?
I mean, so it was Mike Fazio as well. It was Zach Marquis was actually on the team,
Really?
and even Daniel Pazaricki, and I'm trying to think of the other few, but there was a few like Alberto Fiore. He doesn't really play anymore, but it was a mixed group of guys. Like I said, there was a core group of us that came out of that freshman team, but then it was like there was some other guys on there, some older guys and some younger guys as well. Like Jordan Seneca was on it too with us to start it. So it was definitely a, I'd say, a fun start to the men's circuit for us.
That's awesome. I didn't know that, Nick. I had heard rumors that Corey Wilson was a part of the startup of the Americans, and
He was actually on I think he was on the Elite actually before. And then when we had the Americans, then they actually came over. We It was like him, Brandon Jones, even like Tyler Crawford and Travis Bliss as well. they were on the elite, and then they came over to us after.
That's cool. My history, I'm still learning a lot of these teams. Like everybody always talks about the Rams, Chris Hauser's team. So I didn't know if Chris Hauser had actually started the Americans, but I learned something. And this from listening to Brett Holman's podcast. I mean, how do you guys go about selecting your players then? Is there a process that you guys have at this point? Because you've
Uh,
been on a run here. This has been a good run for you guys.
I I wish I could say we had a formal process of doing it, but it's more so of I mean, as we get older, I mean, we are obviously getting up there in age as a core group now. There's things that come up. There's guys on our teams that have families now with kids and whatnot. So it really does just come down to, I mean, who can play in these tournaments, and then we kind of figure out who can go, and then from there we kind of see who we have. I don't want to say like a farm team, but it's kind of guys that like have always like kind of played for us on a one-off tournament and whatnot, so we know who to talk to after that. But for the most part, I mean, we try to get our core group going, and then whoever can come after that is really that's it. I mean, you can talk to other people, but we've had some tournaments where we show up there with like a 10, 11 guys. And I mean, that's just, we always want to try to go, but we
Right.
may not always have the full team.
Right. In the circuit that the A division follows, which one is the hardest one to get guys to go to?
Well, I mean, I'd say originally it was probably Harrisburg. That was the hardest one because it was in January. And it's about like 6.5 hours from us. So that was definitely the hardest one. Um, and now like I know that it moved to Jersey, so it's a little bit easier for us to go there now.
Mhm.
But even like North Americans isn't bad. But I mean, even the clubs, which is in Pittsburgh, I'd say that may be the hardest one now, just because it's such a far drive. I mean, some guys do make the trek of driving 10 hours, but I mean, most of us try to fly.
Okay.
So I mean, it really does just come down to if they can make that weekend happen, because obviously it does cost a lot to fly and obviously stay there. You have to do Friday to Monday pretty much. So,
Yeah.
and if guys can get off work, so
Yeah, absolutely. That's fair. I mean, we've had out of our program in Gloucester, we've had one girl for the Future Stars event, which she was from our program. Her dad, I think they made a trip of it. They went out to Pittsburgh. I think they flew though, and they loved it. That's such a great event. I've never been to that one, but
yeah.
maybe someday I can drag my wife out there.
Yeah,
Maybe
it's a
not.
blast. I mean, I mean, this like Corey's put on such a show there for clubs. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, and I think like now between that and North Americans, those are probably the top two tournaments that of the year. I mean, because they get the most teams. You get a lot of the Canadian teams coming down for those ones, and now that it's kind of like set in stone of what those top tournaments are every year. I
Yeah,
mean, now people know like, all right, this is the weekend that I need to either be able to take off from work, or this is the one that I want to be able to make.
that's awesome. Yeah, and plus there's some live stream involved, which is great. It would be nice to have the outdoor championship. Is there any plans for that, or that not probably sure about that?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, obviously it would be great. I mean, it's like they do a great job, like what Jason Kelly
Great
did
tournament.
at North Americans. I mean, just getting like the different camera angles and everything. I mean, it obviously it helps all the people at home a lot more, and I'd say it helps the viewers and make our sport more legit, so that people can actually understand it and watch it, so that it's not just a stationary camera or someone just with a phone recording it. So I mean, I hope that they do, but I think that that's still something that like needs to grow in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this again. It's like being there in person, and the camera just doesn't do it justice. And again, that's not a knock. I'd rather have the live streams all day, every day, because I can go back and watch film and learn from you guys more than anything else. But I'm like, just seeing you guys in person, like I just remember the Saints were playing. I think it was Arsenal, and I was walking, and you just hear this huge bang up against the boards. I'm like, man, did these guys get physical? No shoulder
Yeah,
pads, Nick, nothing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's just so. So anyway, it doesn't do it justice. But that brings it back to your team specifically. The term that I've been told is the Americans just want to run all day long. Is that an accurate assessment on how you guys actually play your game? Because watching you go in person, I have a little bit of a different take. but is there a strategy behind you guys?
Uh,
I don't want to
I'd say,
give it away, right?
well, no, but I'd say if you ask our team, I mean, we're probably the only team as of late, no, but we're probably the only team that like never practiced. So I would say we're not definitely not the team that like always wants to run. I'd say
Okay.
we definitely try to rely on our skill more than just speed and structure, because I mean, again, that's how we really have come up as a group. We've never really had like an official coach. We did for a couple tournaments here and there, but again, we don't have that person behind the bench saying what we do. It's really just like, I'd say, between the captains and the core group. I mean, we all kind of come together and figure out a game plan from there. But I mean, it's for us. I mean, obviously, we want to be up to speed and we want to make sure that we're at the top of our game. And I think that the USA program has really changed that for us, because now with guys making this USA team, it is not necessarily forcing guys, but it's encouraging them to get on the rink more, play more, and practice more, and to work on their speed or whatever they need to work on, to help them not only for the USA program, but for these tournaments as well.
That's cool. Good. That's good to hear. From watching a little bit of you guys playing in person down there, what I found was that you guys have a tremendous amount of skill. Um, Forgive me for using a basketball term, and I never played basketball in my life, but it's almost like you guys have the ability for this fast break action where someone like you see the rink really, really well, ball comes back to you, and immediately it's up into the neutral zone, and you've got someone busting hard to the net. You know what I mean? There was a lot of fast transition, is what I'm trying to say. And I was like, is that how these guys? Like I said, it looks like a strategy though, even if you may not work on it.
Yeah, so I mean, it all depends on the game. I mean, I think it definitely comes from playing with these core group of guys for so long. You kind of know tendencies and like what they're able to do. I know, like, for specifically like in a defensive zone draw, like I almost tell the winger every single time, like, hey, if I get it, just go. Especially in like these rinks, like North Americans and in Philly and clubs, like they have netting, so you can use that, and it's definitely something different than like Leominster, Fitchburg, like where we're used to. It's outdoors, you can't use that. So we try to use that to our advantage, where we don't typically get to use that at home. So I mean, it's definitely something where we could get a winger just springing right off a face off, and then it's just a quick up and whatnot. So, but a lot of it does come down, like I said, just to the chemistry that like, because I like some of these guys on this team I've been playing with since I was 8 years old. So it's like I know exactly who they are, where they're going to be, and like their skill set and how to take advantage of that.
That's awesome. And like I said, I didn't take when I was watching you guys, I didn't see you guys as a team that wanted to run all day long. You guys looked like a team that had honestly looked like set plays. It really did. It looked like the way you guys break in the neutral zone was it looked like everybody knew where to go, where to be, supporting
Mhm.
passes, and off you went. For you personally, are you a type of player that likes to slow the game down where you are in defenseman, or are you
Yeah, I'd say it's all based on like situation too. I mean, it's like you said, I mean, you want to have like those fast breaks sometimes, but if it is something where I'd say you're pinned in your own end, and you just like, a lot of people tend to just ice it, where you obviously you want to try to just like slow it down so that either you can get a change or just make the smart play. And I think that like that comes back to that, like playing in the USA program. That's what's taught me the most, is because like the world games, I mean, it's so much different. It is a possession game, so it really teaches you, and you learn how to make the best of a play where you don't just throw it away. You don't just throw it up the boards or give it away. Like you either circle back or try to get it back underneath your net, so that you can slow it down and you can kind of just sit there, take a breather, let your guys move and get into position, rather than just rim it around the boards and fire it up or just lob it out of the zone. So that's one of the biggest things. I mean, I definitely say I would want to slow it down if it's in our own zone, but I mean, obviously I want to, if we can catch a team on a fast break, then yeah, I want to get that ball up the ring.
It seemed like, Nick, there was a few times like you're the type of defenseman that I like the way you play because I'm the type of player when I play ball hockey, I like to slow the game down. And I'm a forward, but I'll play D in ball
Mm.
hockey sometimes, which I think is harder. I really do. I think it's a I don't want to talk about myself. It was in NBHL tier 3. It was just miserable playing defense. I just, but um, when you enter the zone, I like to just sort of get everybody in position, set it up, and just move the ball around, cycling the ball, etc. Things like this. But
Mm.
the one thing that I wanted to compliment you on was I got to watch a lot of the Misfits game because Aaron played after, not after your game, the game after that one, and you guys had, it was like they were winning 3-2 in the third period, but the game reminded me of the old Patriots, where it's like you've got a younger team that's going to give you a run for your money, but at the end of the day, the more experienced team is going to win. And that Misfits team, they're New Jersey and Mass kids. Is that, and I say
Yeah,
kids, probably young. They're a young team, right?
yeah, they were they were comprised of kids from all around the country, but it was like the U20 team,
The U20 team.
part of the U20 team. Yeah.
Okay, and those guys could fly, regardless. But
Yeah.
I just felt like, and again, they looked like they were well coached. It just looked like, okay, the experience is going to win out here at some point. And you probably remember the game tying goal. Whenever I find, like, for me coaching now, I'm sort of transitioning my game to the bench. Um, it's hard for me sometimes in real time to see what our teams are actually doing to make, okay, do we need to make an adjustment? And in that game, it almost felt like you guys, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it was like you weren't too concerned. It's like there wasn't any panic in your game, and you just kept kind of just going with the flow. And so they actually had a penalty, and it looked like they overloaded the right side, and you at this time were the right defenseman. And I think there's a video of this play. But where I'm going with this, Nick, is whenever you look back and like watch film, you'll see that the play develops. Sometimes that second person is the one that actually creates the opportunity,
Mhm.
and the goal scorer gets all the credit, but we sometimes miss who actually started that play. And in this situation, it looked like they were overloading the right side, and then they try to cross it to the left, and you just picked it off cleanly, like it was nothing. And right away, it was almost like you knew ahead of time exactly what you're going to do with it, which is another thing that we're trying in our program, is to teach not only our women players but even our youth players that, the game of hockey can be so fast. Using your periphery, knowing where people are, and then right when you get it, already know where you're going before you get it. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
And in that play, I don't know who scored, by the way, but immediately you picked it off, headmanted it, right up the middle, and the breakaway, beautiful shot over the left glove. I have to point to my left
Yeah.
side. Do you remember that play?
Yeah,
That
and
tying
I mean,
goal?
yeah, and I mean, it comes back to, I'd say, just experience too. And I mean, obviously they are a group of young kids, and I mean, they are most likely like the future of this game as well. But I think like for us, there really wasn't any panic really in our game during that moment. Because we had already played them, and a lot of those guys are from Mass, so
Okay.
it's funny enough. They're actually all split up between like our Mass tier 1 teams. So some of them are even like on my team, or on the Stars, or Scorpions, or whatever the other Mass tier 1 teams are. But it's, again, it comes down to experience, and I think like one of the things that I feel like I can contribute a lot to is like reading those plays, is like when someone is looking at like where they're going to pass for a long time, like it's easier for me to read that and jump that play. And then from like when you get the ball, I mean, that's like the experience from Worlds, is like you have to make such quick decisions as soon as you get it. You can't take too long, because either someone's going to be right on you, and so it forces you to make these really quick decisions, even if it's not a tape to tape pass, but putting it in an area where someone can go run to it and get to it. That's really, I'd say, like what has helped me understand and become a better defenseman, seeing it from the back end, because you see everything in front of you. So being able to, like, as soon as I get that ball, like being able to just head it right up, or whatever, fly the zone with someone, or lob that up for someone to go chase it down.
Absolutely. It's interesting is like our program is brand new to ball hockey, but ice in Gloucester, Mass has always been king. It still is. Don't
Mm.
lay for you. So we have adults that are now playing our men's league. We start a week from Wednesday. Next week. Isn't that crazy? Can't believe it. And then I'm tier 2 NBHL out in your area.
Yeah.
I'll be playing out there. And one of the things is like a lot of these guys played ice hockey, and there's always these guys out there that want to go out there and just dangle and just
Mm.
dangle, right? And everybody's like, oh man, but it just seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, like you said, is yeah, there are going to be times where a guy can dangle through someone, you make a great play and off you go. But for the most part, it seems like in that A division, it's a lot of moving the ball up the rink as quickly as possible, transitioning and getting those opportunities. Is that a fair assessment or
Yeah,
not
I'd
really?
say it's much more of a possession game, and like you will have like that north-south game, where it is just run and gun. But I mean, I'd say maybe once a game is where you see like that rare dangle or toe drag or whatever it is. Maybe it is on just like a breakaway or something like that, or even to get to that breakaway, but you rarely see it, because it is such a possession game. I mean, it's you want to control that ball. You don't want to take the chance of doing a toe drag and then they pick it off and then you're going the opposite way. And I think that it comes down to like the biggest difference between ball hockey and ice hockey is like you it's a lot easier to toe drag when you're gliding, whereas
Well,
like you
that's
can't where you can, it's a lot harder when you're running too. So
so
um
true.
and so obviously like you want to have that ball, so like it's so much easier just to either like chip it up the boards or headman that ball to someone rather than make that play, because you know like what the consequences could be for turning it over.
Absolutely. Cool. I agree with you too. Gliding and doing a toe drag is far easier than
Yeah. Oh yeah.
trying, trying to run. I'm still trying to figure out how to run with the ball, Nick. It's you know what I mean. I'm still trying to figure that out. I had a podcast with Ann Gertz of the Masters team, and she's primarily an ice hockey woman who got into the game later too. And she told me the same thing. She's like, I had to figure out how do I actually push the ball down the rink, because in ice hockey it's so much easier. But anyway, so there was a play too down in North Americans that I watched you make. You had an assist from the corner. I don't know who got that goal, but it looked very similar to the game that you guys played. And as you can tell, I do watch a lot of like the national level because that's how I learn is by watching games or
Mm.
trying to. And there was a very similar goal in I think it was against Finland where you guys had a power play and you were in the corner. You passed it right to sort of the middle of the slot in the circle. Guy picked the corner, and the same thing happened in North Americans. I don't know if you remember those plays at all, but
Yeah, I fed
but
BG Garno right in the slot
yeah.
in
And
North Americans.
what I like is that's the type of game, Nick, that I like. So when I left there, I was telling Aaron, I'm like, that card is the best defenseman out here. You just settle, you know how to slow it down, you know how to pick up your head and make a play. And I hope that as a coach, I can teach young players to play like that. So, um, it's fun to watch, man. Sorry,
Yeah, it's fun to play. It's
oh,
it's it's I mean it's the game is, I'd say, it's getting faster. That's for sure. I'd say that's one thing that I've learned. I mean, for me, even being, it's crazy to think about, but like now I'm one of the oldest kids on the USA program when I remember being one of the youngest kids when I first started. So it's amazing to see like these, like the speed of these kids and even the teams that we play overseas too, and all the kids even in just North Americans, like the Misfits kids. I mean, it's like those, the U20 kids are just like they fly around the rink, and that's the future of the game. So it's like you gotta be able to keep up with them and stay on top of your game.
it's impressive how fast you can move, for sure. I mean, and Brett kind of talked about this a little bit on the podcast. He was talking about how like guys are getting, taller, a little bit lankier, just so
Mhm.
they can run these distances. And I obviously meeting you in person, I think you have a couple inches on me. I'm not a big guy anyway. But would you agree with that assessment that guys are getting taller, trying to get more speed?
Yeah, I mean, even like our USA coach Corey Hirsch, he always talks about like you almost have to be built like a soccer team. Like that's like the I'd say like the athletic type or athletic fit that you need to be. Just because you are running around there so much. And you see it from these other teams too. Not just like the USA teams and North Americans, but like the European teams, like the Czechs are, I'd say, probably all above 6 feet, and they're
Oh, wow.
probably like maybe 200 to maybe 210, and they just run like track stars. So I mean, it's obviously you can't be going there out of shape. I mean, you have to be able to move your feet on the rink, because you'll stand out if you don't.
That's interesting. I mean, and you're going to it's Switzerland, right?
Yes.
It's coming up. When is the Worlds?
So it's June 19th to the 30th, I believe.
How do you guys feel you're gonna do?
I feel great about our team. I mean, it's again, I think that with the experience that we have from our core group is great. I'd say it definitely helps with a lot of our first timers. They played in Montreal in 2022, and that's the core group of our guys. But I mean, even some of the newcomers on here, I mean, they're at the top of their game right now too. So I'm excited to see how they do, like Brandon Jones and like Corey Frederickson, like that line with Corey Wilson as well. I mean, they've proved so much, I'd say, in the past year, of how successful they have been, not only just on our team with the Americans, but like with the NBHL and Stars and whatnot. So it's going to be really exciting, and getting that youth speed as well. I think that that's definitely going to help us.
What are you guys doing? Eddie Costa was on this podcast with some of his players for the U18s. When do you guys have your camps, and what are those camps like for you guys?
So we had the majority of our camps already.
Okay.
We had a tryout, and then we had two camps at the beginning of the year, and they were actually just supposed to have one last month, but they postponed it. But basically, what it consists of, it's about depending on rink time and whatnot. We try to get a full day, so we're probably on the rink from say like 12 to 7, something like that. And you'll start off with just like I do like the warm up, and then we'll do some just standard drills, get your feet moving. We'll work into some flow drills.
Nice.
We will go into anywhere of like 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, and then we'll work on breakouts, break-ins, and how to defend those breakouts and break-ins, and then also working on special teams, because that's a huge part overseas. I mean, penalties and our penalty kills and power plays are pretty much what win you games. So that's a crucial part that we have to work on. And then we typically scrimmage. I mean, we want to, obviously, iron sharpens iron, so you want to be able to play against the best. So we're scrimmaging our own team. So being able to play at the top of your level, and then so that'll be like a 7-8 hour day, and then the next day they brought in some local teams, like if it is like a NBHL team, for us to scrimmage as well, so that we can work on different things, so that we have our whole team on our bench. And it would be more of like a controlled scrimmage, I'd say, so
Is it
that
really?
it's like, yeah, so it's like we're purposely going on the kill, or we're purposely going on a power play, or whatever it is, just so that we can work on it. And even just like stopping in certain situations, so that we can really break it down as well.
That's awesome. I mean, Nick, you know what? I've said this a few times. I'll say it again. Is that what impresses me most about the ball hockey world is how much practice goes into it. I mean, if you think about men's beer league ice hockey, I mean, there's guys, they're not practicing power plays, man. They're not,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
just. I played in this one time down at a hockey town in Saugus, and I just remember this one team that we played. There was this one guy out there trying to dangle to everybody. The whole, you know what I mean? Like there was no, so it's so impressive because even like at a national level, but you like you said, even the Americans. I know the Shamrocks practice. I've seen them practice at Leominster a few times, and after leaving there, so it's just that's really cool. I love the idea of controlled scrimmages. I think that's we did that if you don't mind me telling the story, I had since my wife has fallen in love with the game, like we're going to be going to Tiverton, Rhode Island for the Spring Fest. We have two teams actually going down there next. So trying to they're the both groups that we're bringing down there, we're kind of intermingling them because we have the core players that play in our house league, and then we have these other people that are starting to get into our house league, but they're not, they're kind of geographically separate. So we're
Okay.
trying to intermingle these groups. And the first time that we actually had a scrimmage, I invited some of our house league players to come scrimmage to do a controlled scrimmage. That's exactly what we did.
Yeah.
And the house players were mad at me because they felt like I was favoring the travel team, which I was, Nick. I was like, I said, I'm sorry. We're just trying to get them ready for this big tournament that's coming in. We end up getting destroyed anyway. So I mean, but I felt bad. But it's a little different when women are different in general. You probably know that.
Well,
Anyway,
that's one of the things like about like these, I'd say like camps or anything. I mean, the teams that come to scrimmage us, I mean, they know that it's going into it. I mean, it really is. It's meant more for us, not for them. So it's again, we want to get put in situations or practice these situations that we're going to see over there, so they understand that yeah, you may be doing a penalty kill for four straight penalties just so that we can really practice our power play unit 1 and unit 2.
absolutely. And do you guys primarily use the umbrella then, or does it ever vary into overloads or anything like that?
Yeah, so it varies. I mean, I know from like us, even like what we did in Montreal, I mean, it really does depend on like how they are set up in the kill as well.
Okay.
I know like I would be traditionally like I was the point person, and like Johnny Ruiz was to my left, and Jordan Albright was to my right. And in that scenario, I mean, there was times where I would just stay up there and I'd either be feeding one of them in the one-timer position, but then that like we realized like we had to continuously move because obviously like in these tournaments other teams are watching your power play and penalty kill, so they kind of see like what your tendencies are. So throughout the tournament we had to continuously move, and there was actually a couple scenarios where like I would take the ball from the point over to the right side, and then Johnny would slide up, and then I would feed him, and then he would shoot from the top, and like we actually scored on that a couple times, or anywhere where they move the ball down, and then we're just continuously cycling in there. So it does depend, but I mean, especially like when you first get set up, I mean, yeah, you have like kind of like your set areas of where you want to go, but then from there you kind of have to see what they're doing for the kill and then how we can move around that to get open guys.
That's cool. And when it comes, you guys go over. You play against. You're representing your country. You're playing against other, countries. What's it like when you guys have had this experience, like being up in Canada in 2022? Was that Montreal? Is that
Yes. Yep.
okay? And then you guys have to come back and compete against each other at home. Is there like, I don't know. I'm not really sure what I'm asking, but
Yeah, I mean it's you're always like every team that goes overseas or wherever it is for the USA team. I mean, you create that, I'd say, that bond of brothers. But then everyone knows like once we go to these tournaments, I mean, it's you're still representing your team. Like you still want to win. We still want to compete. So it definitely still does, I'd say, separate at that point. It's almost like you leave it on the rink, and then but yeah, I mean, once we're over there, I mean, it is funny to see how everyone from different areas comes together and bonds in that group setting too. Whereas they were enemies, like for instance, like for clubs, I mean, that's only a month before we go. I mean, we're all going to be enemies in May, but then we're
right,
going to be
right.
all wearing the same jersey in June. So
That's really cool. Really cool. It's so unique. It's so unique for amateur adult sports. I mean, it really is. Um, when it comes to your personal preparation, your training right now, working out at the gym, what's sort of your regimen that you're going through to get ready, which is now only a couple months away?
yeah, so I mean, I'd say it it definitely helps for me because I work at a gym. So from my experience, I mean, I know just like what I have to do to stay in shape and whatnot. But I mean, to be honest, like going over to these tournaments, I mean, there is nothing that can prepare you for this because you just don't know those scenarios. But as far as like what you have to do, I mean, it is so much running. It is a lot of conditioning because if that rink is so big, and I mean, if you get caught out there for a minute, 2 minutes, I mean, you can't even breathe. You can't feel your legs. I mean, it is so gut wrenching. So to try to train like that and to put your body in that situation is very challenging. So I mean, I just try to get on the rink as much as possible. Like we have like our NBHL league starting up and our spring league in Leominster starting up as well too. So I'm going to be trying to get on the rink as much as possible to like not necessarily get put in that situation, but again, just to continue to play more. I'd say the winter is obviously challenging for us here because we don't have an indoor rink anymore.
Yep.
But it is like no other. I mean, I know for me, I typically like to do like your on and off sprint and walk or jog
Okay.
style, just to emulate like a shift and whatnot. So I mean, it would be just like doing an all out sprint for 30 seconds to 45 seconds and then walking or jogging for like a minute or 2 minutes and then just doing that like 10 to 15 times over. I mean, the first two may not feel so bad, but then it's like once you get to those last two, that's where you're going to feel it, and that's what actually goes on in a game. And that's the hardest part because again, it's something like when you're training, you're not thinking about it. You're like it's so easy to just say like, like I can't do this last one, but like to mentally prepare yourself and push through that. I mean, that's what's really going to help you.
Are you lifting heavy weights too, or are you doing primarily um
It
car? Uh,
Yeah, so obviously like the conditioning, and then I typically I'm not necessarily lifting super heavy. I'd say I'm doing stuff to just like maintain muscle mass. I'm not trying to like build superior strength right now. I'm doing full body routines. So I mean, I think that that's the best option for me right now. I mean, some people are different. Some people like to do certain body parts per day. But I think that for me and like the style of training that I do, I like to do full body. And it could be more of like a circuit style. So I'd say a little bit lighter weights, but faster pace, because I think that helps me emulate the game more. Whereas if I was just doing heavy strength and resting a lot, I don't think that it would necessarily help as far as like my conditioning and what I need to do.
okay. I I'm learning from you so on this. So I wanted to ask you, does USA Ball Hockey have a strength training program for you guys, or is it more like you guys are on your own? And someone like you who works at a gym, probably coaches people, you probably have an advantage there, but do they have a program?
Yeah, so there was actually one that myself and Jason Daly created. He's from the Pittsburgh area, and he's an
Nice.
athletic trainer as well. And this was actually a couple of years ago where we developed this program. And I'd say it's pretty standard. It depends because we're all spread around the country. I mean, people go to different gyms. Like it depends on what you have access to for equipment as well. So we try to keep it as basic as possible. And I know even for this year, like Drew Albright created a program for the guys specifically on our team this year. So and I helped him with a few things on that as well. So I mean, it really is just for guys like who may not even have stepped foot in a gym before. I mean, as crazy as say, there are a few that haven't. So I mean, it's something new that you don't want to make it too complicated for them or too much for them to handle. But you want to make sure that it's going to be productive for them too.
Absolutely. So kind of going back, usually with the podcast, I usually start off with let's talk about how you got in the game. And
Okay.
I wanted to go with you talk about North Americans because that's been fresh in my mind and I wanted to, see your perspective. I didn't watch the gods versus you guys in that championship game, so I can't add any thoughts to it. But just kind of go back to that for 1 minute is like, did you guys feel like what happened? I'll just leave it at that if you have an opinion.
Well, I mean, I'd say the first period they definitely took it to us. And I'd say for that, the tough part about them is when they get a lead, they know how to protect the lead. We did end up tying it up, but I mean they just came right back and then they just popped in two quick ones after that. I mean their last one was an empty netter, but they're so well coached and it really doesn't matter who's on their team. I mean they have their top guys, but with Corey behind their bench, I mean being able to switch up their game plan like mid game and be able to adjust to like what we're trying to do. I mean that's why he's the USA coach. he's
Peace.
he's the best in the game. I mean he helps that team so much to be able to set them up for success.
There was a clip from the North Americans that I watched, and forgive me, I don't know if it was from your game against them in the finals, but there was a play where it was off the face-off. The right defenseman, the right defenseman literally, sorry, Nick, I'm using my hands again. People that are listening to this can't see what I'm
Mm.
doing, but it was almost like once they got possession of the ball, he flew from the right blue line to the left blue line. And it
Mm.
was actually him that actually got the ball that got the ball into the zone, setting up the goal. And I'm like, is that a set play? Is that something that they practice? Is that something that Corey has them doing? You know what I mean? Because it looked again, you guys are from Massachusetts, so I always want the Massachusetts teams to win. I don't know. I'm probably gonna have someone
Yeah.
from Pittsburgh on this podcast going to yell at me about that, but it's I was like, is that a set play? Because that's the awareness that you know, I notice things like that where guys are comfortable jumping in the play like that. And the reason why I pick a play like this is because with our women, they're really learning the game for the first time. And like they don't realize that if you jump in the play, someone has to recognize to stay back and you know what I
Right.
mean? But was that do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen this play or
Yeah, and I mean that comes back to like what I said before. I mean, it could have been something that they just said right off the face off, like, hey, if I win it back, like just cut across the rink and go. And that's where like I talk about, like even if you can't make a tape to tape pass, putting it in an area where your player can go get it.
absolutely
And that's where the netting comes into play for so much of these tournaments, because the ball basically just dies, like, and it's you don't want to. I'd say you can use it as like a safeguard, like if you are pinned in and you need to like ice it or whatnot, you can just fire it up against the net and it almost just die and drop and it won't be an icing. But there are certain things where it's like, all right, like if you're in your own end and we win it back clean, just go. And then like someone can just lob it up there and or just fire it off the netting. And that can, I'm sure that was probably a set play.
great. It was a great play. I'm like, that's the kind of creativity that I talk about our women's program because I coach them the most. You know, they're my
Mm.
wife's having them go to tournaments and like we're really working on it. If like we have a men's team in our organization, but it's not as like you know how it is. It's hard to get these guys to go to a novice tournament, you know, in Pittsburgh, even though
Right.
even though we live in Gloucester, you know what I mean? It's funny about that. And we're not there yet. We're starting to get people that are really understanding that this game is played at a very high level, and we're just not there yet. We're getting there, and that's my vision too, is to get us to where we need to be and have fun with it because
Yeah.
I like the camaraderie building as well. I like going with my buddies and playing and. Um, I was telling Jason Kelly on the last podcast. I mean, this we're going down to North Americans. I mean, I have three daughters. I love going out to lunch with them, and it's a great time, you know. And um, going in the pool, things like this. You just you appreciate it more, Nick. You know. So
Yeah, and it gets, I mean, for guys that are people who don't travel as much, I mean, it forces you to, I'd say, embrace the game a little bit more and understand that like it's not just your area, like where that game is being played, and it can make you better. I mean, that's without traveling. I mean, that's like playing in tournaments. I've been traveling since I was probably 7 or 8 years old for these street hockey tournaments. So being able to play against different competition and going to see these places. I mean, you have so many memories, and honestly, you meet. This is how like guys become friends of like this of these USA programs, and or even outside of that too. I mean, I've made amazing friends just from being able to travel across the country and go to these tournaments too.
Absolutely. Definitely. I'm a big, I mean, like you growing up playing ice hockey, I got to go to some cool places. That the game, like I said, I owe a lot to the game of hockey, for a lot of my life. So anyway, as I was saying, I usually start out, how'd you get in the game? But tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into hockey. Um, you're a Leominster guy, although did you grow up in Leominster? I'll just let you tell.
No, yeah. So I actually grew up even more west of Leominster. So originally even I grew up in Ashburnham, which is a small town. And that's, I mean, it's where Cushing Academy is, the private school there, big ice hockey program there. But was put on skates probably when I was like 3, I think. So I definitely grew up playing ice hockey first. And then from my parents, like where we lived, we actually moved out. We were in Athol and Orange, so even smaller towns out in Western Mass. And from that point, there was actually a tiny rink, and it's actually still there to this day, but it's not used anymore. It was in Orange, and it was an outdoor rink, and that's like the first time where I played. And I only played there for a year. I think it was Chipmunks. And then when we moved to Ashburnham, my dad, he grew up in Leominster, so he knew about the Leominster Deck Hockey Center. And from there, I mean, whenever I wasn't playing ice hockey, he got me into a league there. And then even starting there, they started like these travel teams and whatnot. And he was actually one of the assistant coaches on the first travel team that I played in. And that's really how I started. I mean, playing in leagues down there, and then like I said, just playing on these travel teams all the way from Penguin all the way up to now.
That's amazing. Did you have a preference when you were a kid? Like, did you like one over the other, or did it not? It was hockey's hockey, and it didn't matter.
Well, I think at the time, I mean, I definitely liked ice hockey more, but I was able to travel for street hockey. I was able to go to these tournaments like where you just weren't able to for ice hockey, because you only played like town league for ice hockey and you didn't travel that much. Whereas street hockey, I mean, we were going to like New Jersey, Pittsburgh, and then like Niagara Falls was like the best thing of the year when we were kids, going out there. So that was definitely like the more fun aspect of it. But I mean, I'd say I definitely preferred ice hockey like as a kid.
Okay. When did it sort of transition that you knew that you were going to get to the level of where you are today, being a national player, big time NBHL guy? When did that sort of transition happen?
Well, I mean, I'd say honestly, when I first made the junior team, like when I made the U20 team, and I was 18 at the time. And at that time, it's like you're a senior in high school and you whatever you're trying to do after high school. I mean, I know obviously not a lot of people go on to play college hockey much more, so I knew that I could do more with this sport than ice hockey. So being able to, again, the first tournament that I went to for the U20 team was in Austria, and it was like the most unbelievable event. Being able to go there, it was my first time like to Europe. So and being able to wear like a USA jersey, I mean, that was one of the coolest things as an 18-year-old, like going to be able to represent your country. So
That's awesome. That's really cool. And what NBHL team are you on now?
I'm on the Oak Ridge Owls.
Okay. Have you always been on Oak Ridge? Is that how it's always been?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yep.
you've always
Yeah.
been
We've had that team since the start of the
since the
league.
start of it. Okay.
Yep.
All right. That's cool. How you feeling about this upcoming NBHL season?
We feel good. I mean, I'd say like with it's unfortunate like for the tier one for Mass right now. I mean, I think we started this league with around like 6 or 7 tier one teams. I mean,
Yeah.
and this year we only have 4. So I mean obviously it's not, I don't want to say a downfall, but I mean, I wish there were more teams in tier one. But I know like with salary cap and whatever else there is, logistics wise, I'm excited for it. I mean, we're definitely we're gonna be playing the same teams. Like we're playing the Stars 4 times this year, so it's definitely gonna make it a lot more competitive, and have like those rivalries. But I'm excited for it.
That's awesome. That's I can relate to the four teams. NBHL Boston was tier three, and it was played at it was a beautiful spot actually. It's still there, the Willie O'Ree rink, and the Bruins obviously built that rink, and it's right off the campus of Harvard, and I think it's Alston. Um, and tier three, Nick, it's not like your level, but it's also a smaller rink. It's only
Mhm.
probably maybe 120 feet, maybe. So you're like, you have these guys that have, tier three players that are just grinding it every single week. And it
Yeah,
was it was a lot of fun, but playing on the asphalt wasn't as enjoyable. I love playing on the surface. I like the decking and
yeah,
um but playing the four teams was like you knew like there was a team that might be a little bit weaker, but by the end of the season it was just like just another tough game on the schedule. So
right,
it's
right.
uh it's it's it was a lot of fun. And I told Anthony Senrocco, I saw him down at North Americans, and I told him, I'm like, yeah, it was a grind, man. Every Wednesday, because we played on Tuesday nights, every Wednesday I wake up, my shoulders were sore. It's just it's a great feel. I like soreness though, but
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. So that's going to be challenging though, seeing the stars a couple times, that many times. So
Yeah, and I mean it's I'd say between the Stars and us, I mean that's
yeah,
almost our whole Americans team. So it's like obviously you're friends and everything, but I mean I know that they have the bragging rights right now because of last year winning. But I mean it does create good competition for us, and like I said at the beginning too, I mean it helps us play our game because we know that we're playing against the top level in that division. So
absolutely. So all the years you've been playing hockey, getting on skates at 3 years old, making it now where you are um, assistant captain of the national team. Is that
yep.
one of those captain? Yeah. And you were on what team did ISBHF do that you were on at the end of the tournament in 2022? Is it like all league or something? I don't forgive me. I don't
Oh, the all
all
tournament
term. You
team.
were on
Yeah.
the all term team. All the years of hard work, the effort. What do you think has made you the player that you are?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it definitely comes down to commitment, I'd say. That's the biggest one. Because like I said before, I mean, from guys who may have started the Americans, we've seen guys come and go. I think I've just stayed committed to the game and continue to play. And even just like working my way up, and still to improve my game, because when I first made the men's team in 2013, I was a forward.
Oh, really?
I was a forward my entire life. So like
Oh,
even the U20 teams that I played on in 2010 and 2012, I was a center my whole life. And when we created this Americans team, we basically had too many forwards and no defensemen. So that was like when I made that decision to drop back. But when I was a forward on that first men's team, I was a fourth liner, and that was not that it was a shock. I mean, obviously, I knew that there was guys older than me, better than me at that time. I was just very young, and I mean it forced me to learn like what I need to work on, because I mean there was a reason why I was on that fourth line, and I had to obviously get better at certain aspects. And then going from a forward to a defenseman, not only I have to work on my game in total, but now I have to work on more of the defensive game, to be able to make another men's team. And I was able to in 2017 based off of that. So whether it's working on speed or even just like skills. I mean, I think that one of the big things for me was just like working on my shot from the point. I mean, that's what I was more so known for. And that like just continuously practicing that. That's what really helped me.
and Nick, how do you overcome like adversity? How do you what's your mindset when something comes your way where you're like it didn't work out the way how do you think about adversity?
Yeah, I mean I'd say the adversity that I had in 2013, I mean it was definitely an eye opener. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pissed. It sucked, but I mean that really helped me though, because I can still remember to this day one of the captains on that team, he pulled me aside and he was you are going to be the leaders of this team in the future. He's like, so just learn from it and continue to grow. And I took that to heart. And I mean, that's really what had helped me, I'd say, just be determined and to continue to work hard to make this team, because it's not just it's not an easy team to make. I mean, like even from this last tryout, I mean, there's so many guys that could be on this team, and it's such a hard decision for these coaches and GM to make these decisions. So I don't want to like just think that it's a privilege and that I'm here just because of my name, but I want to show that like why I'm here.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. I mean, one of the things, Larry Furman, probably know him well. When I saw him one day outside the rink, and we were talking, and I said, "Yeah, Nick's gonna come on the podcast," and he goes, "Nick's a great guy. He's also very humble." And that's to me, Nick. That's like one of the things that's like, when I connect with guys like yourself and Brett, the humility. I'm always drawn to that because I always believe that the better you get at something, the more humble you become because you know how much work, adversity, things that
Mhm.
you have to overcome to get there. And I've always been fascinated with successful people. And even like a Corey Hurst, the guy is so passionate about the game. It just flows, right? It seems like it flows right down to you guys,
Yep.
where you know what I mean. It's we need more people like you and him in the game and in the world too. But um, my other question that I had around Leominster, was it a big transition when you learned about floating blue or anything like that? Or was it just like not really? It was just sort of, okay, I got it. Off we go.
Well, when we first learned it, yeah, we were all over the place. Like didn't know what to do at that time. But then I'd say even now, I mean, it's still just the transition of playing two different games almost. Like even from NBHL to our spring league, like they go on at the same time. One's in Fitchburg, one's in Leominster, and it's two completely separate rules. So like I have NBHL on Sunday nights, and then Tuesday nights I have to go play
Sure.
in Leominster, and I'm playing a totally different game. And I mean I know it's slight rule changes, but it changes the way you think and how you play. So um it's and especially like with the worlds being the floating blue too, I hope that like or I wish that like almost all of it would be the same, just so that it can help us so that we're not having to go back and forth from these rules. But I understand obviously different places have different rules, but it was definitely a transition. And I think even too like for Leominster and Fitchburg, I mean they are slightly smaller rinks than what we play in like North Americans and clubs. Like those are bigger rinks. Like it's when you play floating blue, it opens up the rinks so much more. Whereas like this, like Leominster and Fitchburg, I mean, even though it's floating blue, you don't have that much space as you would in these other tournaments. So it's still that I'd say that's where like for the Americans, like we do rely on a lot of skill and being in tight and being able to make certain plays in tight uh, areas rather than just like spreading it out because you can't in those ranks. So that's why I think that's helped us in these tournaments, especially the ones in Leominster and Fitchburg.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've always, I mean, you being an ice hockey guy too, I mean, feel free to correct me on this, is like red line at Leominster has just it just splits the rink into two zones. And it reminds me that this is, I don't want to sound rude when I say this, but it reminds me of like floor hockey in elementary school where you can't cross the D can't cross the line. But,
Right.
I've made mistakes in Leominster because I played in, embarrassed to tell you this, but I think it's double E there. And and my brother and I played in that league together. And I've gotten in trouble for raising my stick up above my shoulder to signal that I'm coming off.
Yeah.
Didn't know that was a penalty. And the lob rule,
Yeah. Yeah.
I I had to ask Bobby Hauser. I'm like, what is this rule? And he goes, I wasn't going to call it
Yeah.
because I didn't know that that existed. So it's just I still have so much appreciation for Leominster. You know,
Yeah.
you know,
And we see those we see those penalties all the time going back and forth from NBHL to the Leominster League, where it's like another one is grabbing the ball. Like you can't grab the ball in Leominster, and so but you can in NBHL. So you'll see guys all the time that are just like it's just instinct now. But like even another one, like you said, like raising the stick up, or even like if you touch the ball above your
that's what I'm
shoulder in Leominster, that's a penalty. Whereas like in NBHL or any other tournament, it's just a whistle just
yeah,
for touching the ball above your shoulder. So it's that's what I mean. It's like it's I don't want to say it's mind games, but it's like such a back and forth thing of like what do I need to do now, or what do I need to do on this rink compared to like what I just played.
absolutely. For someone like me, like coming from the ball hockey, like the floating blue NBHL, and then going to Leominster, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna get so many penalties. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's a mind game. But like I said, I don't mean that to be negative about Leominster too. I have a lot of appreciation. We bought the surface from MS3, and
Yeah.
it's been the best surface around. So it's all good. It just I always like to, you played at such a high level. You probably see things that, like I said, most people don't.
And we grew up playing there too. So I mean, I'd say it's more of like a natural thing for us to be able to go back and forth. But I'd say like for other players, like if they come in for a tournament in Leominster, and it's those rules like that they've never even played before, then that's when that transition it makes such a difference for them. But like us growing up on it, it's just like, oh, okay, all right, we're doing this week or today.
Got it.
So
That makes sense. And so I did want to ask you, you have some coaching experience too, right?
yes. Yeah.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that. Because I saw a clip of you on, I think it was USA Ball Hockey, where you were coaching. So, is that the future for you when you can't play anymore? And I hope
um
that's a long time away, Nick, too. Trust me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
me too.
you know,
But I mean, it's yeah, we went over to Czech Republic, and it was this not this yeah last summer, and we coached the U20 team, and it was me, Johnny Ruiz, and like Bill Brasco from Pennsylvania, and Jason Shank as well. And it was awesome. I mean, that was definitely my first, I'd say, real experience of coaching that level. I mean, obviously I've played in that level, but being able to coach it is totally different. But it was actually it came about because during COVID, I was supposed to coach the U20 team at that point, which was like even like Brett was on that team. What was comprised of the U23 team last year, we were supposed to coach that team, but it was during COVID and it got canceled. So that whole group of guys got to play in the U23s. They had a whole new coaching staff for that, but I was excited to be able to coach the U20s. I mean, it was definitely a different perspective for me, because I haven't coached before. But I was excited, and I was able to, I'd say, give my experience of like what I've playing in these junior tournaments and men's tournaments, and be able to help these kids grow, like from what I know and what I see on the rink as well.
did you enjoy it almost more than playing, or no, not even close?
No, because it makes you more frustrated because you want to get out there. I mean, me and Johnny were saying it almost every game. It's like we wanted to jump over the boards so many times. It's just like not that like we're like frustrated at our players or anything, but it's just like
From a player perspective.
you see how the game is going, and you're just like, oh, like I just want to get out there and like make a play in that situation. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there are times where I'm at the stage in my life where I enjoy coaching more. I've always been more of a teacher coach anyway.
yeah.
And did you feel like you were developing a style as you were coaching, or
Well, I mean, I think it's for me, I was still kind of learning it as well. So, I mean, I'd say learn from what I've had in my, like for my coaches. So like, I kind of like from what I was taught, and try to take pieces of that. I mean, as you said before, like more humble, more quiet. So for that, it was definitely a change. And where I know like Johnny's energy. Johnny's the energy guy. Me,
Yeah.
I'm more of like the mellow guy. So I'd rather like my style, like I would rather watch this play develop, and then like when they came off the rink, I would then pull them aside and individually tell them like, hey, maybe we should try doing this or look this way and make that play. So it's not to say that each thing is right and wrong, but that was just like how I learned in that moment, because I didn't know what to expect going into it. I didn't know how to, I'd say, how I was going to handle it or how my experience was going to come out in those scenarios. But I mean, I can always learn from that. I definitely want to be able to give back to this program a lot more, and continue coaching, even while I'm playing or when I'm done playing. I want to be able to continue that as well.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm kind of similar in that way, although I'm more comfortable coaching at the youth level, because that's where the league started. I mean, I was 20 years old when I started Young Legends. I still don't know what I'm doing half the time, Nick. It feels like,
Yeah.
but I've learned over the years that there's a lot of psychology in the way that you communicate with kids, and you don't want to you want to give them the constructive criticism that they need to get better, but you don't want to berate them and make them feel like they're garbage,
Right. Right.
because and I'm always the type of person, even with my kids, I'm always like, listen, you're going to make mistakes. Mistakes are okay. And that's how we learn. That's how we get better, is through our mistakes. And I preach that better than I practice on myself, because I'm flawed in the sense that like I demand perfection for myself all the time. But we can never be perfect, right? It's all part of learning. So
Yeah.
coaching has actually made that better for me. It's made it healthier. Um, and it's cool. I also want to say that there was a video that you did that I was able to find. Sorry, it sounds like I'm creeping on you, but I try to research the guests as much as possible. And was it at Leominster? You did a video. Was it the slap shot that you showed?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That was a good
Yeah. It was I think that was during COVID.
one.
Like Corey Hirsch, he was kind of just like, he wanted to, I'd say, in a different way, be able to grow the game, like get videos out there of like, how can we grow the game, how can you um say prepare kids or help them learn skills for ball hockey. And so yeah, it was I was on the North Rink in Leominster, and being a teaching them how to do a slap shot. I'd say it's very embarrassing to watch it back. But I mean,
It's a great video.
it's yeah, it's out there. It'll never be deleted now. But it was
Damn.
it was I mean, it's cool just to be able to, I'd say you did it and be on whatever, like if it is like the USA Ball Hockey website, because you never know who's gonna watch it. You never know. You never know. I mean, it could help some kid who's never picked up a hockey stick before, and help them start playing. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I've watched a great video, and I appreciate those things, because I'm always trying to give, information to our players, to help them get better. So I know exactly what you're talking about, though. Like sometimes I'll look back at podcasts I did, and I'm like, I can't watch it. It's too embarrassing. I look like an
yeah,
idiot. Or, you know what I mean? It's why did I say that? But you also have to watch yourself sometimes to figure out if you know. Uh, are you asking the right questions? Are you getting your story across? Because that's the
right.
most important thing. So with that, kind of my last question of the day would be, how can we grow this game more? You mentioned it being legitimate, which I already know it is, but what do you feel like we need to do more of?
Well, I mean, I mean, obviously you got to start it at a young level, and I mean, just almost how the NBHL is, I'd say, uniting the nation with that. I mean, trying to do that at a youth level as well, because I mean, like learning from these other countries, and like when you go to Worlds, I mean, you see how they start these kids, and I mean, it's like they almost just like, I know that they're smaller countries, so it makes it a little bit easier, but they almost put them, it's like his like ball hockey boot camp pretty much. I mean, like they start at a young level and they learn everything that the national team is doing to grow consistently so that they can eventually represent that country too. So I definitely want to start at the youth level, and I'd say for us, like being able, and that's why me and Johnny did this, and even like JD Dutney, like guys from the USA team giving back to this, like showing that like this guys on the men's team want to help these youth programs grow because we want to give back that experience. I'd say that the hardest thing um for coaches, I mean, if they are coaching a youth program or a youth whatever, a young USA program, if they haven't played in it, they like there's certain things where they may not understand the situation or scenario where that we can help with that. So I definitely think like for more of our USA guys, like help grow the game in that way, whether it is doing like these camps, or even just getting in that coaching world and helping that way.
Absolutely. I'm a big believer we have to start the grassroots programs as well. I think the hardest part, like, be Gloucester's what, an hour and 15 from Leominster. It's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
As for him, it's even further. We actually had a kid. We have a guy that's playing in our men's league this coming spring who went to Cushing as a PG and just played in that. He played out of Hooksett, New Hampshire. The Mountaineers, New Hampshire Mountaineers. I don't even know what league this is, Nick.
Okay.
There's so many junior programs now, but he's
Yeah.
coming. He's back now from. I know he wants, his father and I have talked about it. He wants to play Division 1, and he's a heck of a player. So he's going to be playing in our men's league. And I've forgotten why I'm telling you this, but my whole point is like he played in Young Legends when it was a basketball court, and now he's playing it as an adult.
Right.
And it's great to see that keep it going. But I think what we're trying to do is in our area is let people know that people probably not gonna like me saying this, but some of these kids I think are better ball hockey players than the ice just by watching them play on. I've had a fortunate.
Yeah.
I've seen them play on both, and I'm like, oh, I think they're good hockey players too. They're good ice players, but I'm like, you could be a damn good ball hockey player here, in a couple of years. So we're trying to get it out so that Lemonster always talks about that radius, that famous radius that I've heard
Mm-hmm.
about so many times. And in our situation is we're not close to Lemonster, so we're trying to draw, which is the North Shore, is trying to get more kids in the game and have fun with it. And I said that was my last question, but to you, I mean, did you ever feel like at some point, like growing up, you got to play on a street hockey rink very early in your life?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever get this feeling that like the term street hockey, where people think of it as playing in driveways and playing it in tennis courts or whatever. Did you ever have that feeling like street hockey is always played on a rink? Does that question make sense, by the way?
Yeah. I mean, I still get it. I still get the questions to this day. Like when I say like ball hockey or even street hockey, they're like, "Oh, like what is that?" I mean, it's the question that you continuously get. But I mean, you almost have to like go in depth of like how to explain it, of like
Yeah,
how it's you're on basically an ice hockey rink, but you're running around. But it's definitely growing up as a kid. Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought of street hockey like when I had Milek nets right outside my driveway, and I mean that's
absolutely.
what we were doing.
All do.
But I mean, when I first got introduced to it, like in Leominster and even Orange, I mean it it just helped me expand of like what street hockey was. It was allowing me to play that game that was so fun in the driveway, but now in a competitive level. Whereas a lot of kids, I mean, if they do only get the opportunity to play in their driveway, I mean, that's great. But I mean, for them to be able to continue that on a rink and still in that competitive level where maybe they aren't fortunate enough to play ice hockey, now they can still play hockey, but just at a different style. So I think that's the best part about it is that it is a lot more, I'd say, inexpensive than ice hockey, but it allows them to still continue play that sport that they love.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel like we're seeing a lot of that where in Gloucester is like we're not the first to do this. We're not.
Mm-hmm.
But we're the first in our area to do this. And so if there's a lot of like I've been up that rink just by myself, or it's just me and my wife, and after everybody leaves, you'll have someone that's just straggling along. It happened recently, it actually happened the other day. We have a woman that's joining our program that might want to play goalie, and her dad came on and he came up to me and he goes, I wish I had this when I was a kid. I wish I had this rink when I was a kid, and little things like that. And I'm like, well, we've got an over 45 league coming. You should try it.
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah,
oh, dude, I can't run anymore. I
yeah.
got bad knees, but this guy was 63 years old. So I had a stick on hand, and that gives me actually a little bit of personal satisfaction that, for maybe 5-10 minutes, this guy can shoot on his daughter in a real rink and feel like, I can't. That's, to me, has always been like the game still gives those feelings back to me, which I appreciate. And I don't, the first time I ever saw, um, let's just say ball hockey, was I was down in Philly and I was in grad school, and a person invited me to play roller hockey. So I went, and it was a Saturday morning. I played roller hockey. I got done with it, and I was taking my stuff off, getting ready to leave. And all of a sudden, this group of people, just men and women, they go out there, no skates on, just go out there play. And I went right to the rink, and I'm looking over Nick, and the guys that invited me, he was going to walk out with me, and I'm like, Al, what are they doing? He's like, oh, they're going to play ball hockey or deck hockey. And I said, you mean they're going to run this whole thing? And he's like,
Mm,
yeah, they're going
yeah,
to run the whole thing. And my first thought, Nick, was like, the reason why they're doing this is because they can't skate. But I quickly learned that there's a lot of ice hockey, roller hockey players that play ball too. And
right,
it,
right.
it was it was it was captivating. But what I left with that day was this thought of, does that mean that's indoor street hockey? I know this is kind of but for some reason, like, I'm always looking to define the game, and I'm like, it's running, so technically it's street hockey, but there's rules and it's a rink. And like I said, I've fallen in love with it. I've been in love with street hockey since I was a kid. I played all the time in my driveway. It's how I felt like it made me a better ice hockey player, though, too. And
Yeah,
I don't know if you're the same way, but I was, believe it or not, very, very introverted as a kid, and I kind of
yeah,
grew up. I'm more extroverted now. Clearly, I went right up to you.
yeah.
Uh, and but actually, it was street hockey that would get me out of. I was always overwhelmed by school, and don't get me wrong, I love learning, but it was like when I got home, I would go to my grandmother's house, being with my parents, I'd go out, grab my stick, and it was a way for me just to be in my own world. I don't know if that makes any
Mhm.
sense, buddy, but um,
Yeah, I mean, it allowed you to kind of get away, and even like for, I'd say, a kid aspect, like um where you don't have that opportunity like to just like go out on the ice anywhere, just like by yourself, but then you can do that for street hockey or ball hockey. Like you can just go to a rink. Like I went to the rink on Easter morning just to go shoot, so it's like you have that opportunity to go out there and really just practice whenever you can. And like you were talking about before, I mean, it's not only the youth side, but it also, I mean, this game still allows people to play as they're older as well. I mean, guys who maybe who didn't get to play ice hockey and it's way too late for them to learn how to skate. Now they can still play hockey, but it's a different aspect. So I think that's why it's one of the best sports.
we had guys in the NBHL Tier 3 in Boston where uh, Corey had connected me with Matt Strybeck, who I think Matt.
Yep. Yep.
Probably know him very well, actually. And Strybe, we had a great conversation. He's like, I'm trying to build this up in Boston. Can you help? Can you put a team in? I said, I'll do my best. So I got a group of guys. I said, we're going to go to Boston on Tuesday nights. They're like, let's do it. And then I had to take in some free agents. But the point that I'm trying to make, Nick, is to your point, is these free agents were like, wow, these guys are really good. And these guys had not played a lot of street hockey or ball hockey. So they were,
Right.
and they did well. They did well. I would take them again if we had NBHL tier 3. It kind of dispersed right now because Eddie Costa opened a tier 3 down in Fall River. And
Okay.
so one of the teams that was playing in Boston was like, well, we live closer to there, so we'll go there. And
Right.
because Boston didn't have a deck, like some players, so we tried to move it to Gloucester, but it just, I told Anthony, I said, don't fret, we'll get it to Gloucester someday. So,
Yeah.
and I also need more bandwidth, Nick. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, any last thoughts you have? Any way to get in touch with you if people are fundraising things for the tournament coming up? Anything else you want to promote?
Um, Not specifically. I mean, obviously we are going overseas in June. I'd say if you can, I know that I'm not sure exactly where or what the service will be, but I know that they'll be having some type of streaming service for that.
Nice.
I would say definitely if you haven't watched it before, though at the world level, definitely check it out. It's amazing. I mean, as a player to be able to play against these teams in these countries, it's one of the best feelings in the world, especially like after you win, you do get to hear that national anthem. So um, definitely check it out. It'll be like I said, June, I think it's June 20th to the 30th is when the tournament starts. We'll probably have about 4 or 5 round robin games, and then it'll be medal rounds from there. So it'll be quarters, semis, finals. But definitely if you know someone in your area that's representing the USA team, I mean, it's all the support. I mean, it means the world. I mean, obviously not everyone can travel to Swiss to go support us. So getting the support from home, I mean, that goes a long way as well.
That's awesome. By the way, in 2022, you guys won was it a bronze?
Yeah, we won the bronze medal. Yep.
So looking to get back in the medal circle. But
Yep.
I wish you all the best, Nick. Thank you so much for doing this. It's great talking to you, picking your brain on all this. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. And best of luck to you guys. So everybody check this guy Nick out. Instagram, I think. That's how I reached out to you, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. He's a phenomenal player. I must have said that about 3 times. I mean it sincerely. Humble guy, just a wealth of information. So thanks again, Nick. Till next time, everybody. Enjoy your day.